So the next thing we want to take a look at when we're thinking about these ideas of scarcity and opportunity cost is a model in which we try to think about how a consumer is going to spend some discretionary income that he or she might have on things like movies or going out to a restaurant or buying music or whatever it is that we might be doing with that discretionary income. Right, so we'll refer to these models here that we'll use as budget constraints. And just like with PPFs, right, they model the scarcity the consumer faces, and we can also make some ideas about opportunity cost of a decision to consume either a unit of X or Y. So let's start here with this consumer who earns $60 a week in discretionary income. I'm sorry, $60 a month in discretionary income. He can spend that on one of two goods. He can spend it on X or he can spend it on Y. So we want to be able to construct a budget constraint that shows us a little bit about scarcity with this information. And right, this consumer is going to spend all of his income. If he doesn't, then he's not utilizing his resources efficiently. And right, the amount that he's going to spend on X is going to be equal to $10, the price of each unit of X, multiplied by the number of units of X that he consumes. And the amount that he spends on Y is going to be equal to the price of Y multiplied by the amount that he spends on Y. So this is a simple little linear budget constraint. We can map it onto this two-dimensional surface. Right? We can start by saying that if he spends all of his income on X, so he buys no Y, we can use the budget constraint to figure out what the x-intercept is. By solving for X in that equation, that gives us X equals 6. So at most he can have 6 units of X. Do the similar thing for Y here, and we get 12 units of Y. So here we've got the consumer scarcity mapped out. Somewhere along this budget constraint, a consumer is going to locate him or herself. They're not going to operate inside the budget constraint because that would be inefficient. They're not going to operate outside of the budget constraint because they can't. So the next thing we want to do is think about opportunity cost. Now let's imagine that this consumer starts here where he's consuming all of his discretionary income on X and he wants to purchase 1 unit of Y. So we want to figure out what the opportunity cost of Y is. So what we're thinking about here is moving from this point here, this x-intercept point, to the y-intercept point. Right? And so we've got to figure out how many units of X this consumer gives up to move from here to there. So the way we can do this is to compare the outcomes. Before, we knew that he had 6 units of X. Now, we're going to substitute away from X for Y. So we're going to give him 1 unit of Y. And then we're going to solve for X again to figure out how many units of X he has to drop in order to purchase that 1 unit of Y. So now we're going to solve this equation here for X. Right, X, it turns out, is 5.5. So now we've got a bundle where this consumer has 5.5X and 1Y. So we can say the opportunity cost of consuming Y is 1/2 unit of X. Right? He had 6 units of X, now he's got 5.5. He had to give up 5.5. He had to give up that 1/2 unit of X to get that 1 unit of Y. Now this is a line, and so every time that this consumer wants to consume another unit of X or another unit of Y, he has to give up the same amount of X. So there's no law of increasing cost here. That's because there's no specialized resources of production, like we saw with the PPF. Now notice here, we can also figure out the opportunity cost of Y in one of two different ways. We can take the ratio of the prices. That's going to equal 1/2 units of X. or we can take the maximums and we'll end up with the same opportunity costs. So there's really three different ways that we can figure out what the opportunity cost of Y is. We can use the budget constraint, we can take the ratio of the prices, or we can take the ratio of the maximums. Either way, opportunity cost is going to be calculated accurately, and we can figure out that opportunity cost isn't going to change because of the nature of the resources that are being utilized by the consumer.